Greetings and salutations. This is the voice of Loquacious of Herd, bringing you his afterthoughts on My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, Season 7, Episode 1, titled Celestial Advice. I heartily suggest that you find and watch the episode itself, sans commentary, before proceeding with either the Spoken Herd Afterthoughts review or viewing my full reaction, which is hosted at the link in the description. Please support the official release, and be warned, this Afterthoughts review will contain spoilers for the season premiere. With that out of the way, on to the review. We begin this season in a fashion that's quite different from previous season premieres. There was no grand threat, antagonist, or dire trouble to be dealt with. What is more, this is the first premiere that wasn't a two-parter. We've had two one-part finales in seasons 1 and 3 respectively, but never a one-part opener. Instead of the usual adventurous fare, what we get is a transitional episode, one which picks up right after the Season 6 finale and carries us forward from there. The focus is less on grand plots or broad world-building, but on deepening our understanding of certain characters. I heartily approve. The characters are one of the many wonderful things about this show. Seeing them brought to the full focus is quite enjoyable. We open with Spike being best distraction, while Twilight does some stealthy measuring within Starlight's room. As a tabletop gamer from way back, I find myself thinking that these characters really need to spend a few skill points in perception. It's amazing, intentionally comically amazing, how much they tend to miss. While they're at it, a few skill points into insight or sense motive wouldn't be bad either. I like how this scene lets us establish what's going on and where we are in the timeline vis-a-vis the last season, while also giving us a recap of the finale in Spike's "No really, I am not just rambling on to keep you from turning around" attempt to keep Starlight's attention off what's going on in the background. We're going to a ceremony to honor the brave heroes and heroines who overcame Chrysalis and freed the changelings. Cool! It seems appropriate that the last medal ceremony of this sort we had was back at the Season 2 premiere, the shot-for-shot remake of the award scene from Star Wars: A New Hope, which followed the main Six's defeat of Discord and his return to statue form. In some ways, this already has it feeling like Season 7 is looking back towards Season 2, which, with the inclusion of Starlight Glimmer as a main character, seems quite appropriate. If Season 6 was her Season 1, then this Season 7 will be her Season 2. Also, Spike's rarity impression is rather amusing, and an impressive feat of voice acting. Kudos to Kathy Westlock. It turns out Twilight is preparing a gift for Starlight, a mirror decorated with pictures of her friends. It's a sweet gesture. Twilight wants Starlight to be able to see herself surrounded by her friends first thing every morning. Also, while Spike's suggestion that a card might better send Twilight's desired message, to wit, "I'm so proud of you both as a mentor and a friend, Equestria is safer thanks to you," I couldn't help but think that magical talking mirrors are a staple of the fairy tale genre, so Twilight could probably arrange for her gift to, quite literally, convey the message she intends. As for Twilight's own picture-coated mirror, I was delighted to discover a few extra touches with it. While some of the pictures are clearly from episodes we can immediately place, such as Spike with the Bloodstone Scepter from Gauntlet of Fire, or Rainbow Dash and Applejack at the starting line for Fall Weather Friends, other pictures have characters we know and love, but these images don't necessarily seem to be drawn from any particular story we've seen. I find this helps reinforce the idea that the ponies of Equestria have richer, fuller, deeper lives than the occasional glimpses we get to see. We see some slices of their lives, certain events and challenges, or, in other words, we witness some of their stories. But there are stories aplenty that take place without our watchful gaze upon them. A little touch like this helps both the characters and their world seem like it has extra depth, like it is more grounded and, well, real. Again, I approve. I also am delighted to note that Twilight's mirror sports a copy of the current photograph we see sent to Celestia and Luna every time the opening credits roll. Like the credits themselves, it gives the show a feeling of continuity, which I enjoy. And speaking of credits and continuity, if there's any changes for this season, apart from a redone logo, I certainly didn't catch them. Perhaps there were no changes, or if there were, they were far too subtle for me to note. We return from the credits to the awards ceremony itself. It's quite well attended. We've got the usual types of equestrian ponies here, both Ponyville ponies like Mayor, Carrot Top, and Berry Punch, as well as our town ponies like Night Glider, Double Diamond, and Party Favor. In addition, I like how the crowd contained a scattering of crystal ponies and reformed changelings, plus some other figures, friends of Starlight, from elsewhere in Equestria, ponies like Sunburst, Cadence, and Shining Armor. Discord did a little bit of the old hogging the spotlight because of course he does. Trixie does not approve, in part, I suspect, because she believes that spotlight should be hers. It's a fun frenemy dynamic between those two. Time for the awards. Pink Heart medals go on Starlight and Trixie easily enough. Discord's mutable nature makes his own fit without difficulty. But Thorax's antlers, well, it's a little hard to fit the medal around them. I wonder if this comical scene was intended for more than just our amusement, but was an intentional nod to the fact that sometimes when a character undergoes a big transformation, it can be difficult to accept their new self. When we've become comfortably grounded in our established view of a character's nature and place in the story, it can be difficult to wrap our minds around changes. The result, well, rather like the expressions of the ponies watching Luna struggling to force a fit, the process of integrating the new can leave the viewer worried, concerned, and a little nonplussed. I've seen that expression, or ones like it, upon the face of several reactors when, just as one example, they first saw the new bodies for the reformed changelings. But assuming there is some deeper message here, the scene seems to be saying that in the end, everything can be made to fit, even if the process might feel a little forced. Anyway, to me, all of that sounds rather like a metaphor for how it can sometimes be difficult for we, the audience, to get our heads around a character changing, like, say, by suddenly sprouting antlers. I find myself reassured that even if, perhaps, something is new or changed in the show, and it might not look very promising at first, the excellent folks who are writing, drawing, and acting for this show will surely find a way to make it all work, and work well. Also, hello DJ Pone 3. They really are bringing out all the fan favorites. Plus, as always, there's some lovely background action. Sweetie Belle and Spike are dancing together again. That's a nice callback to Canterlot Wedding. Scootaloo is standing on a table talking to Rainbow Dash. Trixie is boasting to Starlight's friends from our town, and she is interrupted by Discord as those two continue their friendly rivalry. This is as amusing to Starlight as it is to me. Also, I'm glad they left Thorax's voice as is. Those new changelings' voices, I can't take them seriously yet. I feel like I've been transported into the realm of Scooby-Doo. Although, come to think of it, Starlight and Friends exploring magical mysteries scattered around Equestria sounds like something I'd definitely watch. Anyway, we shift focus to Twilight and Celestia. Yay, Celestia! Among the things I really love about this opener, I think Celestia is my favorite. Not just this scene, but all of the Celestia. All of it. But yes, Celestia's comments to Twilight help reinforce the already well-established dynamic that Starlight is for Twilight what Twilight was for Celestia. Starlight is the new Twilight. And just as Celestia was so pleased, proud, and happy for Twilight's successes, Twilight is now pleased, proud, and happy for Starlight's successes. The symmetry and the cycle here continue to evolve in a most delightful manner. But now, the conflict. We need an answer to the question that many of us have been asking about Starlight Glimmer.
So, what are we going to do with her? And by we, I definitely mean you.
Well said, Discord. What's next? Discord is on point as the external driver of this episode's largely internal conflict. He, like us, wants to know what the big plan is for Starlight Glimmer. Even as Twilight grew past the whole need to learn a lesson and report it to her mentor thing, Starlight has now grown past the previously established teacher-student dynamic that she and Twilight shared all last season. Thing is, Discord is quite correct. The conflict is that Twilight hadn't thought about any of that yet. Twilight had been, well, happily complacent. She loved the existing established dynamic that she had with her student. She wanted to keep that joy and happiness going for years to come. Wait a moment, this feeling, it's familiar. It mirrors how many of us feel about the show itself. It's great, I love it, never change. Only this is a show where characters do grow and mature, some more so than others. Never change is, I feel, fundamentally a disservice to one of the real strengths of My Little Pony. So even if it's uncomfortable and scary, along with being giddily exciting, I recognize that I must set aside my own happy complacency when the stories and the characters have grown past the same old, same old. Like me, and hopefully like you, my gentle viewers, when Twilight was faced with the idea that Starlight had grown past the old normal, that Starlight needed to move on, well, Twilight saw the truth of it at once. And cue Twilight panicking. Twilight is new to the whole wise mentor figure role, after all. She's still learning it. Truth is, she didn't have a long-term plan, a grand destiny, in mind for Starlight. Twilight thought she had years to figure that part out, to craft the perfect path for her star pupil. But now Twilight was on the spot, because Discord was pushing hard for a big reveal, and Twilight wasn't going to be able to postpone an announcement forever. This is the face of a pony without a plan. Also, when Discord grabs Starlight to take her to Twilight in an early attempt to get Twilight to spill the beans on what Starlight's grand destiny is to be, am I the only one who thought of, well, this?
Look at my horse is amazing.
Anyone else? No? Just me? Ah well, chalk it up to my odd sense of humor. Also, I like the little touches of background action, as I've mentioned before. Thorax admitting that his new role is challenging, reformed changelings struggling with the concept of makeovers and their necessity for friendship, a subject on which Applejack and Rarity clearly have quite different opinions. Trixie's excitement that she and Starlight are going to be featured in the local paper, and her grumbliness that Discord will be pictured there too. Unheard conversations going on among the background ponies in these shots. What exactly were Berry Punch and the CMC discussing, I wonder? Again, these sorts of details really help make it feel like whatever portion of the story is currently front and center in a given episode or scene is itself grounded in a world where there's always things going on, where one could shift focus from the current foreground slice of life or action-adventure to find an untold number of equally charming stories going on all around. And, speaking of stories, Discord hasn't been put off by Twilight's evasions. No, now he's going to go let the rest of the main six know that Twilight does indeed have a grand plan for Starlight's destiny, and that it will be revealed at some perfect time this very evening. Twilight, accompanied in her latest hour of frantic freaking out by Spike, as is usually the case, rushes off to seek the advice of the one pony who can truly understand where Twilight's currently at. The challenges and difficult decisions Twilight must now make regarding her overachieving and probably not raisin-flavored student. And thus, the episode title, Celestial Advice. Yay, Celestia! Did I mention I really love how this episode incorporates Celestia? How it helps flesh her out and gives her an actual contributing role, rather than treating her as a plot point to be worked around by removing or depowering her so as to prevent her from solving the conflict, or by setting her up as the Deus Ex Machina to resolve the conflict, or by having her perceived approval or disapproval be the conflict. Celestia's here, in this episode, being active as a character, as she herself, not just in her formal role as a ruler or mentor, and not just in a single scene, which is something we have occasionally gotten before, and which I have loved when it happened. But this is glorious. Celestia is amused. She's watching her beloved one-time pupil and new protege panicking and struggling with issues that Celestia knows all too well. Further, Celestia's amusement strikes me as a measure of her trust and confidence in Twilight. While Twilight may be panicking about what to do with Starlight, Celestia knows that Twilight will ultimately make the right decision. The Princess of the Day is not worried. Also, as if it weren't entirely clear already, the show itself goes out of its way to hammer home a point I mentioned before, that for all practical purposes, Twilight is the new Celestia, and Starlight is the new Twilight.
I mean, you were me and I was Starlight. But for now, I need you to pretend you're you and I'm me.
So now, back to the question. What shall we do with Starlight?
Which means it's time for me to send Starlight Glimmer away.
Interestingly, my thought at this point was, yes and no. One of the things I feel the show does exceedingly well with the story of Starlight and Twilight is not just to play on their similarities that are certainly strong enough to realistically state that Starlight is the new Twilight, but the show also plays on their differences. Each of these two ponies has much in common, but they aren't identical. Similar, but not the same. And here is another point of variation. At the time when Twilight was growing past her studies in Canterlot, when she needed to shake free of her happy academic complacency and embrace friendship, Celestia sent Twilight away to Ponyville, where Twilight made friends and ultimately chose to stay. Starlight is now ready to move on with her own friendship studies. But is sending Starlight away the proper thing to do given Starlight's own unique situation? Well, it could be, but it needn't be. So, how to resolve this? Why, with magic, of course. Twilight pulls off a personal fantasy spell, a sort of holographic what-if. I wonder, is there some kind of mild divination magic involved? Something that draws off Twilight's hopes and fears and crafts a scenario based on those factors? How likely are these visions of a potential future, one hoped or dreaded, to actually come to pass? Is it all just Twilight's fantasy? Possibly so. Regardless, it's a neat way to explore some options. And the options they explore, all solid story possibilities. Starlight could go to the Changelings. She could be of great help there. Though if Twilight's idea of Starlight there is semi-accurate, it seems that Starlight would need to work on her acting lessons. But there are dangers and challenges in such a relocation. Perhaps not the precise dangers Twilight's spell and her own fears show her, but yes, it might not be entirely safe. Also, Celestia knows where. I loved Celestia's response to overhearing Twilight's use of that phrase. Have I mentioned that I love how they're using Celestia in this episode? Oh, right. Moving on. Rethinking. What else? Well, we've got the Dragonlands as an equestrian ally. Starlight and Spike have their own rapport going on. Why not send Starlight as an emissary? She'd get along great with Ember. Although I seriously doubt that Dude Bro Starlight would ever be a thing that actually happens, no matter how hilarious it is to see Twilight imagine such a scenario. So why not send Starlight there? Oh, right, Garble and other dragons of his ilk. That's why Twilight might not want to send Starlight to the Dragonlands. Again, the danger factor. So what else? The Crystal Empire? Studies with Sunburst? Now that seems one of the safest and most natural evolutions for Starlight's journey forward. Can Twilight find something worth freaking out about in considering this path for her pupil? Of course she can. It's Twilight, mistress of the freakout. Admittedly, this what-if scenario seems a little less likely. Another side note. I like how they continue their Harry Potter-esque spell-naming conventions here in My Little Pony. In Twilight's Fears, she watches as Starlight combines Star Swirl's Apparition spell with both Spacium Flexidus and Somnambula's Tempus Subjectus. The scene is rather reminiscent of Full Metal Alchemist, and a nod to the idea of hubris. But back to the spell name thing. Apparition spells sound like something to make an illusory, visible image. Given that it's Star Swirl's version we're talking about, and he has consistently been linked with time travel magic, I wouldn't be surprised if his apparition spell specifically conjured up an image of something from the past, or possibly the future. Now, Spacium Flexidus sounds like the sort of spell designed to bend, warp, move, or otherwise flex, well, space. So something that moves places about? Movement that would be less like teleportation and more like folding space, the whole wrinkle in time thing. You know, the idea that while one way to get from point A to point B on a map is to traverse the whole of the map between those 2 points, if you're going the long way round, that is, but another way would be to fold the map up so that point A and point B are touching, then with a single step, move from point A to point B regardless of how many miles might lie between those 2 points when the map is unrolled and lying flat. Only with the three-dimensional world as we, or in this case the ponies, occupy as the map, and the folding it up part being the sort of magical feat that leaves the more mundane realm of quantum physics muttering snidely about wormholes. Combining apparitions with Spacium Flexidus sounds like you could view an image of an object in the past and then move the focus of the spell about, so you wouldn't just see a snapshot of it from a particular place and time, but you would be able to fast forward and rewind the image to watch where and how it moved about in the world. That could be handy, a great way to track down lost artifacts. But then, adding in Tempus Subjectus? Well, Tempus for time and Subjectus for subjectivity, a spell to make the passage of time something that is less absolute and much more relative to the observer, or perhaps the observer's wishes. That sounds exactly like the sort of thing that when added to a spell that lets you see an object from the past, and another spell that lets you manipulate the space-time continuum to shift that perspective around, could then actually do what Sunburst says, take something out of time and bring it here, an object that was lost. This sounds epic! Or it could go horribly wrong and spawn a rift in the fabric of space and time that devours the universe. Twilight sure has an active imagination, and her worries make any course of action that involves sending Starlight away seem far too perilous to consider. So, why does Celestia, who through all of this has been watching with quiet, supportive concern, find it so hilarious?
I can't believe you're laughing at me.
Did I mention... No, wait, hear me out. Did I mention that I love Celestia's laugh? Nicole Oliver is awesome. Why does Celestia laugh? She laughs because Celestia's been here before. She knows these fears, and she knows what needs to be done to reassure the young princess of friendship that all will be well. So Celestia sits us down and tells us a little story. A story about how Celestia felt and what she did way back when the loving teacher sending the devoted student away from home dynamic was one of the driving factors which established Season 1 of My Little Pony. It was so good to see Celestia grappling with issues and fears, to hear her admit her own insecurities and worries, and to see, once again, how much she truly cares for Twilight. This is an episode which has been packed with sweet touches. This scene, the sweetest of them all. So many feels. So much, pride. And Twilight, having gained an even deeper appreciation of her mentor, is now comforted. Much of Twilight's worries had been about the change in her relationship with Starlight, about Twilight's own fears. To be reminded that just because you set some pony free doesn't mean they'll still won't have a place in your lives. That was just what Twilight needed to hear. Also, another side note, I enjoyed Celestia's reference to a group of special fillies in Ponyville. While the main five in their pre-Twilight days might not have all been close friends, it was clear even as early as the premiere that they were at least relatively friendly acquaintances. And then there's the matter of their cutie-marked destiny, their shared fate as BFFs, which was, caused? Perhaps not caused directly. Indicated might be a better word. Indicated by Dash's first sonic rain boom, a triggering event that led, either immediately or shortly thereafter, to their discovering their special talents as fillies. I can totally see Celestia having a general sense that there was something special, a destiny, about those 5 Ponyville fillies. That they were special, that they belonged together. I can also see how she might sense that they were exactly what Twilight was missing in her life, and that their own lives were likewise lacking a certain purple something. I also enjoyed Celestia's worries that Twilight might run afoul of a manticore, which happened. Or that she might become imprisoned in Tartarus, which, well, that one didn't happen yet. I mean, Twilight returned Cerberus to Tartarus, but it was actually Celestia, Luna, and Cadence who wound up imprisoned there by T-Rex. But enough blathering about how awesome this extended look into Celestia's character is. Twilight has been reassured, so on to the party, and the big reveal. And in that reveal, Twilight did exactly the right thing, just as Celestia had done back in the day. The right thing in each case wasn't to send her pupil away. The right thing was to free her pupil to make her own decisions. As Celestia said at the end of the second episode ever, "Are you not happy that your quest is complete and you can return to your studies in Canterlot?" While Celestia had propelled Twilight to Ponyville as part of the whole preparation for the Sunset Festival thing, it was only afterwards, once Twilight realized that she didn't want to leave Ponyville, to leave her friends, that Celestia made Twilight's new position as Ponyville's friendship researcher in residence a permanent thing. A thing Twilight wanted. A thing Twilight hadn't entirely realized she really wanted until Celestia had asked that question. Now, Starlight has graduated. But rather than go on to suggest what it is Starlight should do with her newfound freedom, Twilight, like Celestia before her, steps back to let Starlight decide which way to go from here. Her fate is in her own hooves. Oh, there are possibilities. Trips with Trixie, visits with Thorax, cheese-related mischief with Discord, whose Gouda jokes are something I wouldn't know jack about. They're way out of my league. I'll stop milking the subject now before y'all curdle up and die. The point is, Starlight can go where she pleases. Where does Starlight choose to go now that her quest is complete and she can pursue her studies wheresoever she might wish? She chooses to stay. And this again points to the differences between Starlight and Twilight. Back at the start of Season 1, Twilight's true friends, the calling of her heart, lay far from her established home in Canterlot. To truly explore the magic of friendship, she really kinda needed to go. But Starlight has found her friends, her calling, here in Ponyville. So does she need to move, to take up residence elsewhere to truly explore her own individual path forward? No, she doesn't. There are multiple ways for a story like Starlight's or Twilight's to evolve. In some, once freed from obligations to remain close by their mentor, the student must leave the nest to grow and thrive. In others, once the student is freed, to then leave before they feel ready would hamper the student's growth. Both paths can be valid, and which is to be preferred varies dependent upon many factors. And here we see a slightly different path chosen for Starlight in comparison to Twilight. As a season premiere, this indicates to me that we'll hopefully be seeing more in-depth looks at such character growth, whether in deepening our understanding of established characters or watching a process of change and maturation throughout the season as a whole. For Starlight, I suspect it will mean we'll see something of a continuance of her parallel evolution with Twilight's character in seasons past. I'm interested not only in what will be similar, for they are too alike for there not to be similarities, but also in what will be different. Given the way in which this episode handled, well, everything, I can only say, yes please and thank you, I would like some more of these stories. The adventure, the threats to Equestria, the overall world building will come in time, I'm sure. For now, though, it's time to enjoy watching the ponies themselves. And I do so enjoy watching ponies. There are more things I could ramble on about, like how Discord's reasons for his poking and prodding of Twilight are something that, in retrospect, seems quite in character. And not just his just making trouble for the fun of it character, but his actually starting to come around to having and enjoying real friends and real friendships character. Or I could blather about my hopes that some of the tidbits they dropped in conversations and what-if visions are seeds for story ideas we'll see blossom more fully in the future. I could even give a nod to the surprise appearance of Equestria's version of Henry, the little pneumatic vacuum that could help Pinkie Pie clean up. But for now, this Spoken Heard segment has stretched on long enough, perhaps even too long. Future reaction reviews are likely to be somewhat briefer and less involved. No promises, though. We'll have to see what all I have to say about an episode after I have seen it. If you wish to see my full reaction to My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, Season 7, Episode 1, titled Celestial Advice, the link, as I mentioned earlier, is in the description. Feel free to leave any comments or likes for that reaction here on this Afterthoughts review. And until next time, as always, kindly remember,
there is no wrong way to fantasize.
y'all are awesome. Stay awesome.